But before that, hardly a day goes by without more devastating news coming from the conflict in Syria and the human tragedy which has been unfolding there.
It's thought more than 6 million people have been displaced, but a small number of refugees have been lucky enough to come here as part of the government's resettlement programme.
Now, in the first of two special reports to mark Refugee Week, Tanya Mercer has been speaking to one family about their experience of fleeing Syria and finding safety in Suffolk.
Together as a family and safe. That's what Abed and Gaida always wanted for their children. But it's taken 7 years, 3 countries and many hours of anguish to achieve it. The family have come to Ipswich as part of the government's resettlement scheme to help refugees from the Middle East.
I was in my minivan and was going with my family to the village when we were shot at. I was terrified for my children and scared I'd lose all my family. So we decided to leave the war and the country to keep our children safe.
When we were living in Damascus, there was lots of shooting and fire exchange all around us. So we packed our stuff and left. We hid in shelters and were literally going from one shelter to another.
Abed's injuries were very serious and he was lucky not to have been killed. Their daughter Rahav was just 7 at the time, but her memories of the war are still fresh in her mind.
It wasn't safe, and a lot of explosions and, destroying of houses and things. And I remember that then we went to the village. It was a little bit safe, but then the war followed us to the village as well.
The family fled to rural Syria and then to Lebanon, where they stayed for 4 years, but life was transient with no security. The family were at last given hope when the United Nations Refugee Agency selected them to come to the UK to be resettled in Suffolk.
The UNHCR called us and offered us resettlement. We were really glad because we could escape the surroundings of war and discrimination. We came to England. It's a good place and we want to thank the country and the council. We are so glad we came.
The family have been given a temporary home to live. The children are in schools and now speak good English. Abed and Gaida are learning the language in special lessons. They both volunteer at the local community garden and Gaida does voluntary care work.
We feel like we've lost everything, and everything we've achieved and worked for has gone. The house, the farm and the business. It's all gone and we've had to start from zero. But now we've been able to start again and we have what we need to live. We are the lucky ones.
It's a very good thing to come to here and complete our education, to have better future. Yeah, and it's a big difference between here and Syria. I'm not scared from anything or from the war.
Simple sentiments, but ones that have given this family, who have been through so much, a chance to rebuild their lives. Tanya Mercer, ITV News, Ipswich.
Good to see they're safe now.
Yes, and as part of Refugee Week, Tanya's second report will look at the work of local community and resettlement teams to help families like Abed and Gaida.
Now, earlier this week we heard from a refugee family from Syria who've come to live in Ipswich as part of the Syrian resettlement scheme.
So far, around 20 Syrian families have come to Suffolk. Those chosen to resettle here are considered the most at risk of severe harm or death.
Well, tonight, as part of Refugee Week, we look at the work being done by local organisations and the community who are coming together to help families move on from their traumatic past and rebuild their lives here in the East. Tanya Mercer reports.
On the Ipswich waterfront is the photo exhibition Tapestry, showing the pictures and words of refugees who've suffered so much, but who've found safety here in Suffolk. Among them is Hammam, who moved here 2 years ago with his younger brother and mother after fleeing forced conscription.
If you go to the army, then you've got 2 options. Either you kill innocent people or you get killed. So when they forced us, we decided to leave Syria. Just to decide to leave your country, leave everything behind, all the memories, your friends, your neighbours, everything you love. But we had to make this big sacrifice to save our lives.
But Imam has not just rebuilt his life in Ipswich, he's gone on to work here at Suffolk Refugee Support to help other refugees. He's one of a small team who work tirelessly to help implement the resettlement programme.
We set them up for their new lives in the UK, so everything from referring children into schools, adults into English classes, addressing what's often quite hot trauma from the kinds of situations people have come from, and setting people into networks of friends and community groups.
The resettlement team is helped by volunteers from the local community like Catherine, who's been paired with a refugee family, helping them with day-to-day tasks and providing a friend who can reassure them when life gets difficult.
My family sent me a message saying that having you with us makes us feel safe. It's just being somebody who is available to just help them with any small things that might need looking at.
Ara's involved in the local church. She says in welcoming refugees she gets so much in return.
Knowing another culture, you enrich yourself so much. Everybody bring their culture in and we just grow.
Coming to a new country where you don't speak the language can be daunting.
Where is the bookshop?
This community organisation runs English classes for refugees.
It's been incredibly vital to support their children in schools, visits to the doctors. Many of them are volunteering now. So, having a basic level of English has enabled them to live a much fuller life and become independent.
The lessons have made life for Rifai much less daunting.
Everything different, and I scared. But I study 1 year and 4 months, and now better my life in UK.
And a lot of work and effort is made to settle the children who have gone through so much trauma in their young lives. Omar is 3. His family fled from Syria and are starting their new lives under the resettlement programme.
We're not sure what the family have been exposed to before they came over to our country, so we have to be very careful with what we do in the setting to support that child. The children can often be very withdrawn and they might not want any adult or child attention, so it's something that we have to work around with our planning, as well as doing home visits with the family to make sure they feel comfortable with us.
Once refugees have settled in the area, many go on to volunteer in the local community, and some have even started their own businesses. Abdul fled Aleppo 2 years ago and has now set up a stall bringing a taste of Syria to Ipswich Market.
Everybody here UK from Ipswich, you like falafel and hummus. Some people, you have vegan, vegetable, you like it.
For the refugee families, the local community support here is helping to not only make them feel welcome, but giving them a future they never thought they'd have. Tanya Mercer, ITV News, Ipswich.